Joining us this week on Extra Time with the Courage is NC Courage assistant coach Emma Thompson. Emma, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
No problem. I'm happy and love to chat with you anytime I can.
You get the start you wanted on Sunday evening out in San Diego, Philly's goal in the 12th minute, and kind of watching that game unfold. It almost felt more like self-inflicted wounds a couple different times. You had KK had an uncharacteristic turnover deep in your own end. Casey coming a little bit further out of the box than she normally plays. When you watch the tape back from Sunday, what stood out to you the most?
Yeah, we did have a good start, and we knew San Diego. We've watched a lot of film on them. We know they're a good footballing team. They want to keep the ball. They want to circulate it, and they can punish you. If you're not organized defensively. For us, like you said, we started off pretty well. We started off. We got the early goal. We felt like we were in a good rhythm. But when you do make a few mistakes, especially away, especially in front of a crowd, it comes to bite you, and that's the reality. And this professional game, you get punished, and it's hard to fight out of it. Which is unfortunate because there were a lot of positives to take from it. But you make a couple mistakes, you make another mistake, and unfortunately against a team like that, you're going to get punished. So yeah, it's a tough one to take.
I kind of want to touch on Casey Murphy. She's coming off a clean sheet the week before. She gets banged up a little bit in this game, kind of run into on one of the early goals, and then I mean, kind of just a collision there on I believe it was the third goal of the
Yeah,
game. What's
yeah.
the message to her after this one? Because you know she is such a quality goaltender, and that kind of performance really not indicative of what she's done for this club all season.
Yeah, Casey has saved us in a lot of games. That's the reality of that position. She can make some amazing saves and keep us in the game, and she's not really talked about, right? But you notice when mistakes happen. And it can be the same for a centre back, but especially a goalkeeper. That's the reality of the position, and unfortunately, you know, a mistake here and there can cost you a goal. But the thing is with Casey and any goalkeeper, they're strong-minded for a reason. They're resilient. Um, Hopefully, like any professional, I've seen Casey step up and um, get right back into training. Mindset is on the next game, the next action, and she does that really well. So, regardless of how goals are conceded, at the end of the day, the goalkeeper is the last one to touch it or not touch it. But it can come from high on the field where there's multiple actions that have been made, decisions that have been made that can stop the ball from getting to Casey in the first place. So although it's the final piece that you see, there's a lot that goes on before the ball is even there that we could have adjusted and stopped. So it really is a team effort in those moments.
You touch on the positives in this game, and there were several for your club despite the 5-2 loss. I'd say one of the maybe arguably biggest was Jaden Shaw getting her first point with the Courage. There is just so much pressure on her from the outside, so much expectation. I think there was a lot made of the slower start that she had with the Courage since being traded to the club in the offseason. How big was it for her just to get involved in the offense in that way, having an assist?
Yeah, it's an interesting one for Jaden as well, going back to the club that she came from. I'm sure there was a lot of sort of added internal pressures as well as external pressure. She's still young and she's got a ton of talent and a ton of potential. Our responsibility as her coaches in our club is to push her when needed, protect her when needed, and keep it in house. Kind of stay focused on what we do, what she can do to be the best when we step out on the field, and try and block out any of that external pressure, for lack of a better term, that she may feel. Because again, being so young and being with so much potential, she's got room to grow, especially in our system, especially in our style. And the more that we can help her along her journey, the better.
Absolutely. Despite the outcome on Sunday, you guys have had a lot of success recently here this last month, especially after changing up the formation from the 4-3-3 to the 3-4-3. Walk me me through the decision to make that change, and why did you feel like it was a necessary one?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because we've talked about it a few times really, and for us, our biggest job as coaches is to get our best team on the field, right? And that can be structurally, it can be player relationships, who plays well together, what the opposition brings us, who might counter that, and nullify some of the problems that the opposition brings. For us, it allows us to have our structure that we already create in possession. So we're already sort of without any rotations and movements, we're already in our fixed attacking structure. But it allows us to get players like a Ryan Williams, in a more advanced position on the field more consistently, while giving us the defensive structure to counter anything. In our rest defense to be positioned already to nullify anything. So it's exciting. It comes with its challenges. It in certain areas, it's not always that simple when you write it on the board or talk tactics, then you see it on the field. But we do feel like that we've had a lot of positives from it. And consistency of performance and consistency of players is an important piece to get at this stage in the season. And you think you see that with our results as well.
You mentioned Ryan. I mean, she's really, I think, shined since you guys switched the formation and has gotten a lot of credit. I'd say from a national perspective in
Mhm.
her game. How have you seen really her specifically flourish in kind of this new formation?
Yeah, Ryan's a great example of of a player that is sort of thrived in this role because it brings out her best assets. She's a fantastic defender. She can run forever. She's one of the fastest on the team. But she's also, incredible when she's going forward. When she's going forward, good things happen for us. And especially from a moment when we're switching the point of attack and we're finding her in advanced areas. Um, so it brings out that, and then her relationship with Ash, I think, has flourished. Ash and even Sully on that side at times, Manaka, their ability to combine and get into the final third, I think, is one of the many positives to come out of her willingness and ability to be higher up on the field.
You do have the week off from play, no games this weekend. What's kind of the mindset for the coaching staff as you guys enter this first international break?
It's a bit of resetting from the past week and the games that we've played. It's looking ahead to, we can use this week to sort of plan and look ahead to the next few games. Once we're back, it's important that we get the very most out of training for the players that are here. We've got some that go off and they've got their international breaks and they're going to play various opponents. But it's a fantastic time to, after a little bit of rest and recovery, to get the very best and train hard and still work on our principles here for the players that have been working hard, have been, stepping up in moments, those that maybe might not have got as many minutes, or those that are playing consistent minutes but not going off on international duty. So, we still see that as valuable time on the field to continue to grow. So it's a bit of both, really. It's you know, catching your breath a little bit, but then, you know, pumping it on when we can get back on the field.
I'm curious, do you find yourself trying to watch? I mean, you've got U23 team, you've got the Japan national team, you've got the Irish national team represented with the Kurds. Are you trying to watch all of these matches to see your players, or are you like, okay, this is an off weekend, I'm going to try to approach it as such?
Yeah, I think every coach is different. I always like to keep track of the players. I think it's important to, see how they do and just see how they do in their, holistically in a different environment, how they're performing. Um, Not necessarily live because that can sometimes be impossible, but can always go back and watch it on Y Scout online or there's different ways. Some coaches might try and watch it live, but I know me personally it doesn't always work out, so I'll tend to go back and just catch up with them, catch up with those particular games a little later.
Get a little bit of the highlights later on. Yeah, I don't want to wake up in the middle of the night to watch a game either. Don't blame me on that one. All right, we're not
Yeah.
done with you. When we come back, we're going to be talking about your own soccer journey because it's really taken you all over the globe, I would say. So we'll stick around. We'll have more with Emma Thompson after the break. All right, we're back with NC Courage assistant coach Emma Thompson. Emma, the accent, a little bit of a dead giveaway. You are not from the United States. You grew up in England, came over here to play college soccer, went to Penn State. I know the recruitment process, what that's like here in the United States. What was that like for you in England? Had you even stepped foot on Penn State's campus before you committed?
Yeah, I mean, no, short answer, no. And I was absolutely clueless to the world of soccer in America. For me, I moved over here in 2008 when I was 18. So I've lived a significant portion of my life in the States now. But at the time, I came at a crossroads of where the women's game in England was no way near what it is today. You couldn't make a living doing it. I knew I wanted to study. That was important for me, but I still wanted to play, and I felt like I almost needed to make a choice by staying in England. Was I going to try and follow the football piece, or did I want to go to university and maybe try and find a team closer to that? So it wasn't until a coach of mine in England talked to me about the college system and the ability to combine everything, not just the football and the education, but the nutrition, the health, everything that comes with that. So that's really what attracted me to that, and I landed on my feet somehow with Penn State. I really didn't go through a typical recruiting process, but I had the coaches at the time watch me sort of online, or not even online. It makes me sound old, but I'm not that old. But DVDs and in that way. So to cut a longer story short, it was between them and a couple other teams within the States, and I quickly realized that the coaching staff was fantastic. The facilities and the quality of football there was good. So like I said, I landed on my feet somehow.
So I'm actually from Pennsylvania. So of course, Penn State is the big state school in my home state. But Happy Valley is really in the middle of nowhere. There is not a lot of stuff going on. So when you got there, what was your first impression of the school? And were you like, oh gosh, I've committed the next 4 years of my life to this place?
Yeah, pretty much. And again, I say I'm not that old, but I'm old enough to, where we didn't have our smartphones. There was no such thing as just FaceTiming on your iPhone back then. It was still Skype, where you had to have connect your internet and Skype, or call on a phone, on a communal phone. So, you know, I remember driving up to State College from my mom actually came with me when we originally went to go over there. She had a friend in Washington, D.C., and we drove from Washington to Penn State. Now, looking back, we must have taken the back roads way. I don't know why we went that way, but I'll never forget driving up there. And it was like a scene from a movie. It was the middle of nowhere. I'm like, where am I going? And then all of a sudden, you pop over and there's a big old football stadium. I'm like, okay, that's pretty cool. I can get used to that. Um, I just, I think it paid to be so naive and a bit clueless, honestly. For me, I was like, I'm making the commitment to be here. Let's see how it goes, and I knew I had the safety net of football, right? In soccer, I had teammates right away. I felt pretty good about the coaching staff. Whether my style would suit them, the fitness piece. There were a couple of question marks, but really I felt that was my safe space, the football. For me, it was that, yeah, like the rest, the campus, the culture, the world off of the football pitch, which was a question mark. But I felt like I just embraced it. And that's all I could really do. It was either going to work or it wasn't. And I think being sort of all in, being away from family almost helped.
Well, I've got your resume here from your college days. You were a part of a team that made it to four NCAA tournament appearances. You collected four Big Ten championships, one Big Ten tournament title, and you were the defender of the year in 2011. So it all worked out kind of the best way possible. I guess when you committed, did you envision yourself almost having the college career that you would have? Or looking back, are you like, wow, that was pretty impressive what I did coming over to a country, to a school that I've never seen, never
Yeah.
steps foot on, and you get to walk away with that resume.
Yeah, no, it's good. I mean, I have fantastic memories there. And I think having the coaching staff that I had, not knowing it, but they kind of sculptured me into I think the coach that I am today as well. At the time, for me, it was I really wanted to continue my education was important, but football was sort of my number one at that point. I wanted to make sure I'd reached the top of my game, and that was my focus at the time. When I look back at my resume, I'm proud of it for sure. I am. There's because there's a lot that goes on behind scenes that there's a lot of highs and lows as a player. I mean, you ask any of the players on this team, you see the positives, but you don't really see what goes on underneath and the work and the commitment that goes on behind it. Um, but yeah, it's like I said, positive experiences, and I'll forever be grateful for that part of my journey.
At what point, whether it was at Penn State or maybe closely after, did you say, hey, I love this sport so much, I want to continue in it as a career and go the coaching route?
Yeah, it's a good question because I actually like in college I actually started coaching my senior year, but it was more of a means to sort of make a little bit of income, and there was no such thing as NIL back in those days, so we were all poor students regardless of the circumstance. So it was a way to sort of get my foot in the coaching door. My coach at the time actually recommended, like, hey, while you're in college, take a coaching license. It's the best thing you can ever do. Just put yourself out there and do it. And I did, and that was the best advice because it introduced me to the coaching world a little bit. At that time, I still wanted to play. Being a professional footballer was important. It was a goal of mine at the time. Um, when I graduated in 2012, there was no league, so the league here had folded. So there was no opportunity there. There was a summer league, but it wasn't really. It was just summer league, really. It was a glorified summer league. So I went back home for about 10 months to a year, um, and my rights were still with US Soccer, and I needed to get them shifted. So it took me about 6 months being back in England to be able to play a game. Unfortunately, I was still training, and but it was a very similar situation in that the league was there. We had the likes of sort of Arsenal, Chelsea were getting there. Man City at the time were coming up into the big league as well. Um, but it wasn't. I didn't feel like I at the time could make a living being a professional soccer player at the time. And for me, that was important. I needed to make a living, and I couldn't afford not to. So I was eager to kind of get my career started. And again, it kind of led me into just more consistent coaching roles. And then I made the choice to come back to the States, and I was a grad assistant in New York for Ian Stone, who I knew through again my old coach, and the connection there. Again, I could do my masters. I was a full-time coach with on staff there, and it really kind of opened my mind, and um, again brought me back to the States, which I loved as well. There was always a conflict once I went back home in 12 because I love the States and I love the opportunities that were available here. I love the football, the soccer landscape, and I was always drawn back. So that's kind of what got me into coaching.
You started at the college level, but then eventually went to the club side. What was that transition like for you?
Yeah, so I was coaching in college from sort of 2013 to about 2020, really, right during COVID. And during that time, I'd always been part of a college program, and I'd always coached in a club at the same time. Like on the evenings I would go, and that's where I really got to work on my craft. I was on the field for like 3 or 4 hours each night. It was tiring, but I really think that's the best thing for a young coach, just to get on the field and have some victories, fail a little bit, have training sessions work, have them not work. You just learn more about who you are as a coach. um, it wasn't really until during the COVID time where I actually loved the club piece more than I enjoyed the college, the direction of the college program. And there was a number of reasons, but the biggest one was just the impact I could have on the field more and on the players. Um, so I made the decision to get into club full time, and that's what brought me actually to North Carolina.
When you first came to North Carolina, you were juggling both working with the Courage and then also working with youth teams. A couple years ago, you transitioned full time to working with the Courage. What do you miss about working with the youth teams?
I think it's so rewarding. It's so rewarding. It really is. You've got a mixture of, I've worked with anywhere from like U12s all the way to U19, and the mixture of personalities, steps, like where they are in their journey. Some of them are absolute soccer junkies and they're young and they look up to you like a role model. Then you've got others who are like kind of like the cool teenagers who are still really like kids underneath, but you've got to try and find a way to crack that open a little bit. But really, it's just rewarding. You see your impact, sort of every day, on the development of the players. So I think just being around the players consistently, and just seeing them grow. That's the best part of our job in general, and you just see it a lot more in the youth.
A lot bigger steps that they can take, probably a little quicker than at the pro level with the club,
Exactly.
with the Courage. I also kind of want to talk too. You talk about the opportunities you've had in the States. There's just been so much growth of soccer, especially women's soccer here over the last couple of years. What's it been like for you to kind of, I mean, quite literally on the sidelines, watch that growth a couple years ago? Maybe there's 3,000 people at a Courage game. I was there May 17th. It was
Mhm.
packed. It was one of the
Yeah.
best crowds that I've been a part of. So to be able to see that growth and be a part of that growth of the sport stateside, what is that like for you? What's it mean to you?
It's great. I mean, there's no better time to be involved in women's sport, let alone soccer. Like I just think women's sport in general is getting so much more publicity than it ever has, and warranted. Like I think now, we've known it forever being female athletes, right? We've known it forever that there's a product that is quality, but I think the rest of the world is realizing like, oh, women's football is actually really entertaining, and you know what, business people are seeing it as lucrative and like a real quality investment. And I think it's amazing to be part of it. Um, or when you come out of the little Courage bubble that we're in day out, when you come up and you stand there on the sideline and you see the amount of people that are in the stands, it's great. You look worldwide, you look at the Women's Champions League that just happened and how it was a sold out crowd.
Mhm.
That's where the game is, and it's only going to continue to grow. So yeah, I mean, to be a part of that, it's promising, it's exciting, and it's more motivation to continue to push and try and be the best version of a coach that I can be to help grow the game, because I think that's what it's about. We have to continue to keep pushing the standards, of everything, playing, coaching, how we support the athletes, getting people in the stands. It's important. I think we all have a duty to continue to try and push and grow the game.
I have to ask, I've heard you flip flop between soccer and football. Do you cringe a little bit when you say soccer, or you're like, gosh, this is so American of me?
No, it was funny because I did just realize I did that. Yeah, I don't know. I think it comes on both. Sometimes it's soccer, sometimes it's football. And then I realized I keep saying football. I'm like, well, we call it soccer, so let me just keep bringing it back. But yeah, I think it's more natural to say football still, even after all these years of being here.
That's fair. Emma, thank you so much for your time. I appreciated learning about your journey and your time with the club.
Oh, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.